Hello and welcome to Nikon Report, your weekly roundup of all the latest Nikon news and all other photography announcements that we found interesting. It's Konstantin here, and here is
Becky.
Whoop whoop.
Yay.
Number 30.
Wow.
A nice round number.
Our 30th podcast.
That's right. It's
That's
like
amazing.
30th anniversary.
Mm-hmm. What did you get me?
Nothing really.
I'm joking. Right. So first up.
Yes. First up, it's been 2 weeks.
It has been 2 weeks.
So we've got loads of news to cover.
We better make it snappy then.
Absolutely. Let's get started. So first of all, Nikon Zfc has been officially released in Japan on the 23rd, and in UK they should be launched tomorrow.
Day after. No, the day that this is going live.
The day this is going live.
28th, to
sometime
be specific.
In the future.
Yeah.
Okay. So there was a bit of confusion pre-release of the camera because Nikon released several notices stating that, the demand is too high, and even if you pre-order it, you won't get it on a day one.
No.
Which a lot of websites, I don't know why, but their report says the release has been delayed.
Yes, which was a little bit bizarre and also was quite market specific. So we had a few people call us up and say, oh no, I've just heard that my ZFC is not coming because the shipment's been delayed. And I was like, no, please remain calm. The fact is that in the UK, at least, we have had shipment confirmation from Nikon at the time of recording.
And as far as we know now, they're on the way to us, right?
Yeah, they are in transit. So we should see them very soon. Potentially by the time you're watching this, we should have our first batches. That's not to say we're getting lots. We really aren't. We're getting but a handful. So please do bear with us. But it's better than nothing at all.
Okay.
Which is what we've been hearing for the rest of the world. So Japan said imminent delays.
Well, they said demand is too high, and there are two notices there. One is on 16250 kit, and because it's a silver 16250, they say, well, you may need to wait a bit longer. Now, the one that is to do with 28 special kit, this one, according to translated Japanese by Google, it says release postponed due to the delay in part supply.
Right.
So that one is a little bit kind of more defined in a way that has been delayed.
Yeah.
But as far as we know, we are getting some ZFC 28 special kits.
Absolutely. I will say this. If you have pre-ordered the ZFC and the 28 kit, or you're planning to, do expect there to be quite a wait time on that one. On the other variants, we're hoping for less of a delay just because there was less demand for them, essentially. So anyway, watch this space. But as far as we know, in the UK, they're not postponed.
Absolutely. And this is delay is not to do with the camera, it's actually with the lens itself.
Right.
We'll closely monitor the situation and we'll update you as soon as we have any news.
Absolutely.
Now, speaking of ZFC, Map Cameras, which is Japanese retailer, published an interview with Mr. Hao Nelson, who was in charge of planning and development of ZFC, and also Mr. Funa Suzuki, who was in charge of design.
Right.
So if you want to learn a little bit more of just design theory of the camera and just how it came to be, do check this article out.
Absolutely. So Nikon's not yet announced camera, the N2014, has been registered in Indonesia. What do we know about that so far?
Okay, well, it was published by Nikon Rumors, and they think it's either Z30 or Z9. Fun fact, Nikon Rumors reported ZFC registration back in April, and then 2 months later, it's been released.
Okay.
So it could be either Z30 or Z9, but according to new information, just came out a couple of days ago, the camera will use Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, but it also will be equipped with GNSS, which stands for Global Navigation Satellite System. Basically, it means built-in GPS, right? So that points at Z9.
It does a bit.
Now, what's the difference between GNSS and just standard GPS? Well, GPS is United States Global Positioning System.
Yeah.
The GNSS stands for Global Navigation Satellite System and is a standard generic term for satellite navigation system that provide autonomous geospatial positioning with global coverage. That basically includes GPS, which is USA, GLONASS, which is Russia, and then you've got things like Galileo, Beidou, and other regional systems. So it basically includes all of them.
Fancy.
In one chip.
That's exciting.
So I don't think Z30 will have one of those.
No, it sounds like something that the Z9 might have, means that it could tap into satellites from all over. I'm joking. I don't know that. So now, the interesting thing is that it is not yet announced, but we have had a development announcement for the Z9, have we not? We've had a...
Well, this is yes, but obviously specifications are not out yet.
No. Okay.
So there's still rumors about the size of the sensor. So people think either 45, 50 or 60. Now, 45 is the new one that came out. And because 45 megapixel sensor technically can render 8K resolution for video,
Yes.
it also can produce really fast files. So the idea was 20 frames per second on Z9.
Right.
Now the rumor says it's 30 frames per second.
Ooh.
So if it goes to 30 frames per second, then 45 megapixel sensor, which is smaller than 50 and 60, makes logical sense because the amount of data that needs to be recorded at 30 frames per second is quite large.
Yes. And to be honest, although I personally wouldn't have no complaints about a 45 megapixel sensor because I think that's a really sweet spot, and Nikon have proven that it works well based on their D850, obviously Z7 and Z7II. Saying that, I think from a consumer point of view, I would be fractionally disappointed.
Exactly. That's my point. Absolutely. 45 megapixel is already available. I would prefer to have 50 or 60.
For sure.
Because the higher number sounds really good.
It does sound good, but also then it also feels like Nikon aren't regurgitating an older sensor. And I think that is very important in terms of marketing a camera, which could be potentially quite expensive.
Absolutely. And the rumors we hear that actually Z9 will answer the questions not just for sports and wildlife photographers, but also for studio guys. And that means a higher resolution.
For sure.
So what we hear is that Z8 may not happen anytime soon. So Z9 should answer all those questions.
Yes. So fingers crossed it's not a 45 megapixel sensor and that it's something a little bit more, gives a bit more oomph.
Absolutely.
That's what we want.
Absolutely. You know, I hear larger numbers, I upload.
Sorry.
All right, let's move on to micros coverage.
Xitek published an interview with Nikon discussing micro lenses. We've got a few highlights for you. So the first one was, is it an improvement from the AFS 105mm? And they replied, it is a completely new design to meet the expectations of users. It is very good, I have to say. The next question they asked was, what is the secret of making it smaller and lighter? They've replied with, the material of the lens body has been changed and it has been realized with an aluminium alloy mount and the newly developed stepping motor.
Interesting.
Yeah. Despite its weight reduction, it ensures strength, durability, and optical performance. Next up, they said, some people use teleconverters for F mounts, but is there a dedicated teleconverter? Nikon's reply was, so far there is no such plan. It was not compatible with teleconverters in order to achieve optical performance, AF performance, and weight reduction.
Because, the 105 F mount, you could put any teleconverter on it effectively.
Yes. However, it didn't perform as well as, say, a 200mm in that instance.
That is true. So it was
performed pretty rubbish.
Yeah, that's true. So pretty much it wouldn't actually give you magnification, right? It would just give you extension of focal distance.
That's right, exactly. So that seems to be the reasoning behind that, even though it may have disappointed a few users. Xitek also asked, speaking of lenses, we emphasize the opening performance of the maximum aperture, but do you think that the resolution when the lens is stopped down is also important for macro lenses? I mean, surely. Anyway.
I mean, you do macro stop down, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't shoot wide open.
Yeah, the depth field is too shallow, isn't it?
That's right. So they said the two lenses announced this time are excellent not only in optical performance with the aperture open, but also in suppressing aberrations when the aperture is stopped down. Even if you use a small aperture like f11, the difference from the current model is obvious.
Duh. I like that they're asking the important questions. The questions that we can answer ourselves.
That's right. Like, is it compatible with the ES2? No. The 50mm f2.8 is supported, but the 105 is not. Now, let's just bear in mind the fact that the ES2 needs a close focusing distance of less than 16 centimeters. So 16 centimeters. So the 50mm is the only one that would work with that.
That's true.
The clues in the specifications. The next question they asked, what is the main design differences between the 50mm f2.8 and the 50mm f1.8? Clues in the aperture. Although it is compact and lightweight, it maintains high resolution from infinity to 1x and low optical performance with little aberration. What does low optical performance mean? This translation is not great, I have to say.
Yeah, I'll write to Google.
It is suitable for close-ups of subjects that are prone to bleeding, such as jewelry and watches.
Dear Google, your free translation is pretty rubbish.
Can you imagine blood? Okay.
Well, if you ignore the answer...
Can I paraphrase the answer?
Exactly. Let's do that.
Okay, let's paraphrase the poor translated answer. But so they've said it's compact and lightweight, and that the 50mm macro lens essentially handles aberration and doesn't give you things like fringing,
yes,
as opposed to bleeding, which is what Google translated it to, of close-up
blood
subjects
everywhere.
It's just horrendous. It was bloodbath of subjects like jewelry and watches, where you do get quite a lot of chromatic bleeding, yes,
as they call it. But from my personal experience,
yes,
52.8 is a nice little lens that can be used as just a standard lens.
Yes.
So it's small and light and actually feels nice on Z6 compared to 1.8. 1.8, it's a little bit on the larger side. So while 1.8, of course, is better for general photography, if you don't have 1.8 already and you just need a 50 in your life and macro at the same time, then I would just go for macro.
Yep, I agree. Okay, what is the effect of the combination of the 105mm in-lens image stabilization and the in-body image stabilization?
The answer is they work together. Thank you very much.
They work in harmony. There's no change in the performance value of image stabilization, but the correction effect improves in conjunction with the 5-axis in-body image stabilization.
I guess image stabilization should work a little bit harder at very high magnifications.
Yes. And that's basically what they've said in the next one. Does the effect of it change depending on the shooting distance? Yes, the shorter shooting distance, the smaller the effect. Also, bear in mind that some people shoot with cameras that don't have IBIS, i.e. the Z50.
That's true.
And soon to be the ZFC. So having a lens which has the image stabilization is useful, because you may want to pop that onto one of those cameras and then effectively get a 150-ish mil.
Speaking of ZFC, in that article published by Map Camera, they said, well, look, we had Z50, right? And it's got a grip, and the battery goes in a grip, right? So what we did is, because there was no grip in ZFC, we put the battery this side, and that's extend the camera. So all the right side on the camera where the battery goes has nothing there. So if you think about it, it's effectively the same Z50 design, but because the camera is longer, the battery is positioned this way instead of this way.
Cute.
Clever.
Very clever. Someone spent a lot of time figuring that out.
I know.
Right, dustproof and drip proof. The 105 has high dustproof and drip proof properties by sealing the moving parts. The 50 is designed to prevent water droplets and dust from entering the main body. So, although it's probably not quite as watertight, it is. They're both weather-proofed.
True.
Last up on our highlights of this interview, they said, why is there no lens with the same magnification or larger? What does that mean?
I don't know.
What is that
fine.
question? Just get rid of that question.
Exactly.
Throw it in the bin.
What a rubbish article.
If you'd like to read the article in full, we will link it in the description box and the podcast notes.
And if you'd like to understand it, you better speak Chinese.
Or use Google Translate.
Speaking of macro lenses, on their technical support website, they updated an article about macro lenses where they included those Z micros. So they have added reproduction ratios charts and also light loss charts for those two lenses. So if you want to know what your aperture is going to be at close focusing distance, do check this out. Very
useful.
Okay, well, next, let's move on to firmware updates. We had firmware updates for Z5, Z6, and Z7 Mark II cameras.
In this firmware update, they addressed an issue that would, in rare circumstances, result in unusually loud noises from the aperture mechanism when the zoom or focus rings on F-mount lenses connected via an FTZ mount adapter when they were rotated. So you'd put your F-mount lens on an FTZ, rotate the zoom or manual focus rings, and get a loud sort of noise from the aperture. That, like, you know, that noise that you get when you're stopping down a lens in the Z cameras.
So it's not going to sound like a speaker's coming from the car, from the back of the car or something like this, no?
No.
Okay.
But anyway, so they fixed that, which was very, very specific. We will link the firmware updates in the description box in the podcast notes. So if you would like to update the firmware on your Z6II, Z7II, or Z5, you can do so from there.
Okay, and then also there's been a rumor, the firmware update, that's supposed to come in September, and Nikon rumor says that it will introduce a new real-time tracking. This will be simply a version of the real-time tracking system that will be implemented in the Nikon Z9 and would be similar to 3D tracking that Nikon has in their high-end DSLRs.
Now, better.
it's pretty interesting, but also you can see the real-time tracking now being implemented in Sony cameras. So I've put a link to one of the videos where Sony demonstrates this. So to give you an idea how it's going to look like, do check out this video in the link below. To give you a quick TLDR, is basically you press the button, the autofocus button by half press, shutter release button half press, right? And it keeps tracking the subject. Doesn't matter what the subject is doing. And when you're ready to take anywhere in the frame, and when you're ready to take a shot, you just push the button further down.
That's fancy.
So it's like a fancy version of 3D tracking combined with continuous tracking, which tracks throughout the sensor, basically.
I like that.
And that, hopefully, we will see in Z9 and Z7, Z6II cameras.
Excellent. Now, in anticipation of the ZFC release, the company also updated a few bits of software with support for the new camera. NX Studio added support for Russian, most important feature.
Obviously. I made a call.
They also have made it so that NX Studio can now link with the wireless transmitter utility to display pictures immediately after shooting, which effectively almost eliminates the need for Camera Control Pro 2.
Exactly. And it's effectively a wireless tethering, isn't it?
Yeah. Which is, I mean, it doesn't allow you to shoot from the computer, which Camera Control Pro 2 does, but it is, as you say, wireless tethering, which is fantastic.
It's not bad. There were a bunch of other updates, but they're not that important.
Fair enough.
Now, wireless transmitter utility at the ZFC, nothing else is there. Picture control utility 2 had also a feature where it allows NX Studio to launch picture control utility from the software itself.
Oh, good.
And webcam utility was updated only for Windows to support ZFC. For some reason, there is no Mac update as of yet, so we definitely will keep an eye on this space.
Yeah, that's a bit of a weird one.
We have a very special guest for you today. It's Michael Eleftheriades, who is architect and also a photographer who's been running a very successful Nikon magazine London group since 2007. So, Mike, tell us about yourself and what you do.
Well, thank you, and nice to see you, Konstantin. Thank you for inviting me. I am primarily a photographer, and also I do a lot of architectural work. So I run my own business, and through the years, I would say that I have been doing more photographic related work recently than before. So less architecture, more photography.
Tell me about the club. Obviously, you've been running events during the pandemic pretty much on a weekly schedule. So what do you guys do normally?
Well, if we compare to what we did in the past, we organized workshops and we had seminars. The seminars were basically real meetings, and we would try and have about one per month. And we would meet in the West End. And I would bring a carload of equipment, projection screens, 2 projectors, speakers and all of that. Obviously, the pandemic has changed things in a big way because, for example, in the height of the pandemic, we were actually doing 1 event per week for the members.
Was it over Zoom?
Yeah. We experimented at the beginning and we felt that Zoom was the best platform, and actually it's been working phenomenally well for us. So we've been doing 1 event per week. So every 2 weeks we would have a major speaker invited to speak on an important photographic subject. And every other week we would have a Nikon owner London group meeting.
What do you do at those meetings?
Well, we experimented over the months, and we start off with news. Then we discuss new equipment, any new arrivals from Nikon. And then what we do is we have a showcase where members actually show their recent projects, but they are limited to 20 minutes maximum.
So it's a pretty much kind of time limit set presentation.
Exactly. So they're not doing big presentations. So and usually we have 2 or 3 short 20-minute presentations. Then we have a theme. So every meeting has a particular theme, and everybody sends a picture on that theme, which we discuss at the beginning anonymously. But it's important because it's not a competition. We do not rate the images. We do not give marks. It's just basically discussing the photographs. And then right at the end, we have a technical session. Where
Sorry, I just want to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
I had a vision of some sort of X factor where you and two other members pressing the button, the cross shows up. So it's like, we don't like this picture.
No. Because I think, everybody has the potential to improve and grow. And I don't think there's any such thing as a bad photograph or a good photograph.
Old photographer's technique, basically critique.
Yeah, it's critique and basically what we call constructive criticism.
Something you don't get on the internet as well. All right, well, let's talk about gear. Are you a Nikon Z user now? Have you switched to Z mirrorless system?
Well, I've kept DSLR equipment because obviously there are lenses that I still want to keep using. I got into the Z mirrorless system because I feel that it's the future, and obviously as a trainer I need to understand and use the new system.
What Z do you have?
So I have a Z6, and it's also had the video modification, so that it can do Pro RAW.
Do you shoot a lot of videos nowadays?
I do more videos, but I still primarily do stills. But one of the plans is to do a video course. So we are working with one of my associates. We're doing a very high-level video course for Nikon owner members.
Oh, fantastic. That's really good.
Yeah.
So obviously Nikon has announced a few things recently. So what are your thoughts on it? Let's start with micro. So 50MC and 105 micro lenses. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think they were, eagerly awaited. I think everybody couldn't wait for the macro lenses. I think, macro lenses are very, very popular. As you know, I've written a digitizing course for digitizing your slides and negatives, and macro, of course, is a big part of it. So I have always had, a 55 or a 60 micro and a 105. They've been important elements. So
pretty much all of them are part of obviously 200 mil.
Yeah, and I use the 55 or the 60 for flat artwork when I needed to get quite close, and I use the 105 more for subjects that or animals or things, that flowers or things that I needed to get further away from. But I think I have basically ordered both lenses, as you would expect, because obviously they're required.
Yeah, you got to catch them all, isn't it? So,
the 50 I've already got. I was surprised that I was able to get one so soon. Yeah. I think it's great optically, and I was surprised by how light and small it was. I expected it to be, bigger and heavier, but I think it's also going to be a nice lens for DX users because it's a nice focal length.
Yeah, it's going to be nice for portraiture, and actually the bokeh is pretty good. I didn't like the bokeh on 105 f-mount VR because it felt a little bit busy. So I'm actually quite impressed that they softened the bokeh a little bit. Obviously, it's not the portrait lens levels, but it's definitely a lot more usable. And also the 50 micro is going to be a nice standard lens on Z series cameras because even 51.8, while it's nice, it's a little bit bigger and heavier. So 50 is definitely smaller. So as a nice pocketable thing, not really pocketable, but let's say it's a nice portable thing, it's quite good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's lovely and small, and one of the other requirements for me is when we do a walk that involves an arboretum or somewhere where there's flowers or bees or whatever, it's nice to have a small macro lens rather than a big macro lens.
That's true.
So I'm very happy to carry that 50 mil all through the day along with other lenses. So yes, I think, and also for people who have the ES2 digitizer, things like that, where you do have to be close to the negative, I think it's the perfect lens. If you've got a Z camera, it's the ideal, I think, lens to have.
Okay, well, let's talk about the second release, which is a little bit more polarizing, let's say, So obviously we're talking about ZFC camera, and then we're going to talk a little bit later about the pancake lens. But let's start with ZFC itself.
Okay, well, my thoughts before I had seen the camera, and I heard basically the rumors of a retro body, and I said to myself, oh no, they're going to do something like what they did with the DF again. And also the fact that it's a DX, is that the right way to go? My initial reaction was maybe, this is not the right approach for Nikon. But I have to say, when I saw the camera design and how close it looked to our, to actually a very, very loved camera, which is the FM2, I felt that if they had gone for full frame, the camera would have probably been bigger, a lot bigger, and it wouldn't have matched the design of that camera. And despite the fact that, I haven't had or used DX for a long time, I instantly felt compelled to actually place an order because I love the iconic design of the FM series, and I, as a child, I had an FE2. I currently have an FM3A, which I think is the pinnacle of Nikon SLRs. I just love the size and the design.
You can see the design similarities between those models and ZFC.
Well, absolutely, it's so clear, isn't it? I mean, the prism at the top, the Nikon lettering, the whole style of the rotary dials and everything. It's unashamedly a retro design, but with new twists, like for example the LCD. I think it's lovely that you've got that new design of LCD, which you can use it, for video. You can use it for selfie, video bloggings.
That's true, and you can also turn it and actually don't use it at all if you want to have this 35mm film experience.
Exactly. So I have no doubt that the sensor will be brilliant, and the way I think about this camera is that it's a kind of it's a fun camera for somebody who has full frame equipment that uses it professionally. This is a lighter camera that you take with you, to record your life, your everyday things, and it's a smaller, lighter camera that kind of brings us back to the days of using our favorite, film.
That's true. And then at the curious photographers, we tend to dip in and out of different brands and systems as well. And I know you were using Olympus Micro Four Third system back in the day, and also Fuji X system back in the day. And both systems are well known for their retro cameras. So what are your thoughts in terms of, let's say, the ZFC being unapologetically retro compared to, let's say, the retro systems from Olympus and Fuji?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with retro. I think it's a design issue, and ultimately what's important is the technology inside the camera, and the camera inside is state of the art. And I don't mind if it produces fantastic images and the sensor is good. The outside is just it's just design. So
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned the retro is a design issue. What do you mean by that?
It's the look of the camera. The camera has been designed to look like an old style camera.
Do you think retro design can effectively affect the way you use the camera and, let's say, the way or the speed of use of the camera?
Well, it has certain benefits, of course, that you can instantly view the settings just by looking at the camera. So there is a slight benefit there. But I have to say, it doesn't really make that much difference. I mean, yes, of course, the way you use the camera is slightly different than a more, a newer Nikon design, with the command dial and the sub-command dial. And basically the fact that you have to turn it on to actually see your settings. Yeah.
I mean, one of the issues that Tom Hogan wrote about, that he said that the retro design doesn't solve the problem of usability, so it can hamper the performance of the camera. Now, in my opinion, that the cameras could be designed for different things. There could be camera for leisure in case of ZFC, and it could be camera for high performance. And those cameras are going to have different visual design as well as obviously controls and layouts, button layouts.
Yeah, I don't have so much of an issue with that. I'll tell you the reason, which is in my workshops, what I teach people is to set your settings before you start shooting. So you have an awareness of what's going on around you. You know, you decide on the settings. So ultimately, I think whether you have a retro camera or whether you have a more modern, if you like, design camera, I don't think it matters much to the pictures that you take. I think the retro design is something that makes you feel good. You know, it makes you feel good because you look at that camera and it looks different than all the other, you know, black plastic-bodied cameras around. You know, and it kind of rewinds to a time when we had the film SLRs, which we so enjoyed because, you know, they were so small and they were so portable. So I think, you know, it's more, I think, about you and how you feel about the camera.
It's all about you.
And design, you know, I think is such an important aspect, which sometimes, you know, we forget about because, you know, if you look at the you know, from when Giorgetto Giugiaro started to work with Nikon, you know, the Nikon cameras were at the beginning designed to be functional. You
That's
know,
true.
And there wasn't really much consideration for the look. But, you know, from the F3 onwards, we've had cameras that have had a certain look. And I you know, I have no doubt that, you know, it affected sales because people like to buy things that look good.
That's true.
I
think ZFC has this timeless design of FM3A cameras, FM series cameras. It's just it's kind of stood its test of time, isn't it?
Yeah. And you know, I think certainly for my street photography, I like something that is small, that doesn't shout too much, that doesn't have a big, you know, zoom lens on it.
That's true. So there are different tools for different jobs. Let's say that, isn't it? So you wouldn't particularly, let's say, shoot sports and wildlife specifically with ZFC, but at the same time, let's say I wouldn't bring my D5 to shoot street, let's say, or take it casually for a walk with me. Yes, you can, but not necessarily it would be the perfect choice for this because they're small cameras that can do similar things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think this is the ethos of this camera. I didn't like the fact that I was going back into DX because I have made such an investment in full frame now. But, you know, for this reason, I forgive Nikon and, you know, I'm willing to give it a try.
Do you reckon?
But if there is a full frame version, yeah, sure. I would willingly, and if it's not that much bigger.
But this is my question. Do you reckon the success of this camera will actually decide the fate of full-frame ZF?
Yeah, possibly. It's impossible to say, you know, what Nikon are thinking, but I think, you know, if they made a full frame, I think, again, I think it would be a very popular camera, possibly even more popular. Who knows? But I think it would be very appealing.
Nice.
Yeah.
What was the feedback from Nikon owner members, the group members?
Well, I know quite a few have placed orders. I think the difficulty is, I would say that a very large proportion of the members that I speak to have got Z50s.
What would be your advice to Z50 users if you take all the emotion out of it? So let's say, yes, ZFC is a beautiful camera, but does it make a logical sense to upgrade from Z50 to a very similar camera in a retro design?
Well, I'll tell you something that swayed me. This was an important factor. The fact that it was being sold with a full-frame lens. Because, you know, we've been waiting for the pancake lenses because for us that like street photography, you know, a Z body with a smaller lens would have been ideal. And so far the lenses have been quite large. So now that there is an announcement on a 40mm f2 and a 28mm, you know, f2, those are very, very appealing lenses. Now, if the Nikon is selling a camera that has a 28, you know, full frame lens as a kit lens, then obviously that's a very appealing proposition, because it doesn't matter if you think about it, that the body is DX, because it's just a crop of a sensor. But it's useful because 28 works out as something like 42 mil, so that's again a good focal length for street photography, and it means that I get a lens that I can use with my full frame. I think if
buy a lens and get a camera thrown in, yeah.
Well, buy the camera and get a good lens with it thrown in. Yeah. So for me, I think this is why I think the 28 mil was appealing, not just because of its retro design, but also because it's a nice focal length to use with full frame bodies as well.
The feedback that we're getting on the performance of 28 mil is very good. So far the reports are showing that it's a very nice little lens. The price is very attractive, and bundled with the camera, it's about $250 extra.
I've seen the first reports on the 28. It seems to be fantastic in terms of performance, and I think it's an interesting and unusual decision, to have a DX body with a full frame lens. But like I said, to me, it made the purchase much more appealing.
That's true. So talking about future releases, what is the camera or the lens that you're waiting for in Nikon Z system?
Well, I think something that maybe gives us a little bit more control of the AF system.
Would you call it Z9?
Yes, and again, it's early days, but I should say that the Z9, I think, will be a halo camera. It will be, top of the line, do everything amazingly well. So, I'm really looking forward to seeing it, but I have to say it's not a camera that would be for me.
What camera would be for you? Let's say, like from what is rumored, we have Z9 and then Z8, which probably would come much later. Yeah, so that's what we had rumored. Or would it be more like Z7 Mark III or Z6 Mark III?
I would like to see maybe a smaller body with similar technology, maybe not all of the technology, or maybe a smaller battery, and the larger body, which is more geared for sports photography, and having the built-in grip, of course.
Okay, so something equivalent of D3, D700, which were basically the same cameras except the built-in grip.
Yeah.
And the build quality. Okay.
Exactly. I think that would be very appealing for me.
Let's talk lenses. What lens you would buy straight away if Nikon announced it tomorrow? No questions asked. What lens that Nikon has announced that you need in your camera bag?
Well, I think what everybody is now waiting for are telephoto lenses, because we've got the wonderful but very pricey and quite large 70-200 2.8. I think it would be nice to have a 70-300. I think it's a very, very popular focal length. There is a rumored 100-400 expected, at 200-600. Also, I think for wildlife, it would be a fantastic lens. I also think that because, we've got the fantastic 24-7 TF4 kit lens, I think what would really make a nice addition would be, a 70-200 f4.
I'm with you. But what is the lens for you? So tell me, if you have to choose one that you like, Nikon announced that you just place an order on the same day, what would be the lens that you really feel like you're missing out at the moment?
Well, I own the 70-200 2.8. I think it's brilliant, but I would certainly like something smaller.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us today, Mike. It was a pleasure to talk to you. To the man himself.
Thank you, Con. Thank you for having me.
Oh, pleasure. Tell us where we can find you on the internet.
You can find me pretty much everywhere. I'm on Flickr. You can search for me under my name. I am on Instagram. I am on Twitter. I am on Facebook. Yeah. So,
okay, well, we'll put those tags in the video as well so people can find you.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mike. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
thank you very much to Mike Eleftheriades for that interview that he did with Konstantin there. Please bear in mind that you can subscribe to Nikon Owner for as little as £49 a year. Just visit our website or the Nikon Owner website to do that. We will put a link down below to make it so much easier for you to subscribe, and then you can get all those wonderful things that you talked about by being a subscriber.
Yeah, thanks for watching my interview, by the way.
I haven't seen it yet. I'll watch it when you actually release it. Nikon Rumors published photos of the Nikon Gear Room at the Tokyo Olympic Games 2021. 2020, they're calling it 2020 though, aren't they?
They do call them 2020, like Euro 2020. That was held in 2021.
That's right. This was shot by Vincent Caloute.
Yes, for Fortune News, and they published it with his permission. It looks glorious. Lots of cabinets filled with Nikon gear.
What more can you ask for, really?
Absolutely.
Did anyone look if there's a secret Z9? Sorry.
Not yet, but we'll keep watching. I've actually started to watch the Olympics yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
And part of the, obviously, lack of crowds,
Yeah.
the rest looked pretty much like normal Olympics.
Looked like, yeah. And even so, in some cases, those arenas where they were competing weren't that crowded. It really varied depending on sport.
That's true.
Like
That's true.
gymnastics, usually. So the handful of judges. That's
Yeah.
it. Nice. I love those pictures.
Yeah, what's your favorite discipline?
I like watching the archery, actually.
All right.
Also find the basketball quite interesting.
Yeah, they do 3-on-3 basketball as well, which is like a street basketball.
But there's so many. I mean, the skateboarding.
Yeah. What about dressage?
Dressage, okay, not so much actually.
No?
I don't like watching. Yes, sometimes.
I mean, I find it goes really well with a cup of Earl Grey.
But don't they have more than one? They have dressage and then they have like jumping, but it's not what it's called.
Yeah, but you can't really wear your Ralph Lauren, shirt for jumping. You need the right polo for that, isn't it?
You do. I don't think that they wear polo shirts for dressage.
I do.
Do you?
I have my English breakfast while watching it.
While watching it, yeah, but not actually. Do you ride? No.
I ride.
You do, okay.
I ride a car and a bicycle.
Do you know what you're talking about?
Yes.
No.
Ponies.
Ponies.
Exactly.
Horses.
I rode a horse once.
Yeah.
Gabi got us a package. So they get you to the stables.
Yeah.
First thing you do is you wash a pony. That way you get used to the, to the horse,
Yeah.
and how it reacts to your touch.
I love that.
So that's the first thing you do. And then after this, they get you to an older horse where you can touch its face.
Mm-hmm.
And only after that, you're going to get on the older horse. And again, they put you on an older horse because the younger one can react a little bit differently. So
Yeah.
that one is kind of a seasoned one.
Yeah.
And I was scared.
So interesting.
Yeah.
When I was sort of between the ages of about 9 and 12, I used to work in the summer at a stables, but you wouldn't believe where the stables was. The A40 that goes from Westfields,
Yeah.
right, towards Acton.
Yeah.
Underneath the motorway, there was a stables.
Stables
Yeah.
underneath the motorway.
Yeah, right next to the local gypsy camp. And I used to go and do work experience there. But the funny thing was that you would work from like 9 a.m. to about 4 p.m., all children working, and then you'd get a 15-minute riding lesson or a 20-minute riding lesson. That was your payment.
Do they still do that?
No.
Okay.
It's closed down, probably because of child labor laws.
That's true. That's true.
It was-
Police came in one day.
Yeah.
But their stables behind the Knightsbridge, right? So somewhere between Knightsbridge and Hyde Park Corner.
Yeah, because they do horse riding lessons in Hyde Park. It was so expensive. I did look at doing that at one point when we were living in Kensington. Darling.
Blimey.
Blimey. Anyway, right. Here's an interesting one for you.
Okay.
Nikon product spare parts in the UK are now sold by Fixation only. So Fixation UK, as a lot of you will potentially know, part of the Wex Photo Video Group now, but obviously was an independent camera dealership, rentals and repair shop, and was an authorized Nikon repair service center for many, many years. Just down the road from us in Vauxhall. They now handle all of Nikon spare part sales in the UK and Ireland. So this is due to as they've said, a rapidly changing service landscape. So I love these corporate words.
Yeah, I'd rather call it restructuring personally, but rapid changing of landscape, it's a nice PR sentence, isn't it?
It's all those earthquakes we have in Europe. So we are centralizing our European spare parts operation. That's what they've said.
If you wish to buy Nikon spare parts, please get in touch with them directly by sending your email request to nikonspares@fixationuk.com. And for us dealers, we have to set up an account. Now, speaking of repairs, and that's something that is not in the report, but I've just read about it recently. Nikon USA started a maintenance packages for the repair of your equipment. So basically, this is actually not to do with actual repair of your equipment, but if you send in your equipment to be CLA'd, which means clean, lubricate, and adjusted,
Is it?
then you can have a basic one where they clean your sensor, clean the contacts, etc., etc. Now they also offer a standard package which introduces an advanced camera inspection. It's got a question mark there. So apparently that's something that they do where they plug your camera into a diagnostic device and they check to make sure that everything from the mount to all the gears inside perform as they should.
Right. And they also map hot or dead pixels as part of that service.
That's true. That's true. And then, they even check your shutter count.
Wow.
You can't do it yourself, of course. But then they also have a premium service, which comes with its own butler.
Nice. Do they hand it back to you on a silver platter? Like what's
Exactly. There's a horse carriage comes in, the butler comes out, and on a silver platter brings your camera back.
So they computer calibrate the autofocus system.
Exactly. So I think if you want your lenses to be adjusted to the camera, then this is the one you want to choose. But they also replace loose external rubber grips, which should normally come at cost. And it's inspect, adjust, reflex, mirror if applicable. Now, all this service, generally what happens is they check your camera, they apply the service if nothing else needs to be done. But if a certain repair needs to be introduced, they normally will send you an estimate first.
Yeah.
Because in order for them to do recalibration and things like this, they need to make sure that all parts of the camera is working okay. So this is a basic things you can choose that only happen in the United States. It's not the same in UK, but who knows, maybe you'll get something like this in the future.
Potential. Right. Next up, we have Nikon and Sharp have announced a joint development agreement.
We announced that we agreed.
They've announced that they have agreed about some joint development. Joint development agreement is to accelerate innovation in the implementation of technology of biomimetics. Now, biomimetics is to do with the synthetic reproduction of biological processes.
Thank you, Google.
You're welcome. This agreement enables the combination of Sharp's knowledge in nature technology used in its home appliances and Nikon's high-precision microfabrication technology to create parts that have surface shape with new performance features, such as anti-fouling. Anti-fouling is when you treat a boat's hull with paint or a similar substance to
submarines
prevent fouling, right? Or boats. Water repellency and reduced drag with the aim of adding functionality to a wide variety of products. Now, this makes me think that Nikon are developing a submarine as their next endeavor.
Absolutely. They will spy on Russia.
or boats, maybe. Both companies continue joint development aiming at putting biomimetic technology into practical use in 2023.
Remember simple days where Sharp used to manufacture television sets and Nikon used to make cameras.
Yeah, simple times.
From another news, in what we call the things we don't understand, Nikon opened a Nikon Bioimaging Lab in Shonan Health Innovation Park in Japan to support drug discovery research using cutting-edge equipment.
Right. So the facility is equipped with state-of-the-art equipment useful for drug discovery research and has an experimental menu where you can try cell culture and assays. So as an open facility, it opens the door to a wide range of fields, such as providing opportunities to come into contact with products and educational programs for image analysis of cells, as well as creating opportunities for researchers to interact with each other.
Let's talk about chip shortage. Chip shortage has affected camera manufacturers, car manufacturers, and pretty much all computer parts manufacturers for last, 2 years, 18 months?
Yeah.
And that hasn't changed. Now, the article was published by Wall Street Journal. It's under paywall, but we, via certain tricks, managed to get some highlights.
So The Spark Notes version is price increases are snowballing their way through suppliers and key materials and chip making as the industry rushes to meet rising demand and plug supply holes. As a result, many of the world's large chip makers are raising prices they charge to the brands that make PCs and other gadgets. Industry officials say the increases may continue.
So we've heard that before. Nikon announced the shortage of certain parts like lenses and accessories. They said we can't take the orders, let's say, for 500 PF, etc., etc. Cameras has been delayed. Z30, as well as D3500 and D5600 cameras are not being produced at the moment. Well, and Z30 is not being released because of the parts shortage, because it affected the expensive cameras, but then they can get those parts and pay a little bit extra because the margin is there. There's no margin for cheaper cameras like this.
Yeah, sure. Makes sense.
And therefore, again, Wall Street Journal confirms that this thing actually happens. And for some reason, we have to wait a bit longer.
That's right. They've also said chip shortage has spawned a surplus of fraudsters and fake parts.
Wow, that's interesting.
I know. Businesses in need of chips are taking supply chain risks they wouldn't have considered before, only to find that what they buy doesn't work. Dubious sellers are buying ads on search engines to lure desperate buyers. Sales of X-ray machines that can detect fake parts have boomed. So supply and demand.
Absolutely. Imagine a dodgy man in a dark alley in a long coat. Nikon comes in.
Do you want some chips?
Do you want some chips? Or semiconductors?
But then the person that makes the X-ray machines to detect the fake parts, his business is booming.
Exactly, making money. But tell me this, Becky. So obviously the prices on parts have been going up quite a bit. And that's why we've seen price increases for a lot of gadgets, really. I mean, not just talking Nikon, but if you look at like computer parts, like graphics cards, I mean, this to do with mining as well, but prices were going up. My question is, once the supply eases, will the prices go down or not?
I think that if retailers or let's say manufacturers find they can charge a certain amount for a product, they may not see a reason to reduce the price unless they need to sell that product in higher quantity. For example, if sales are dropping off.
I think we should closely watch this space. Yeah. Grace always Mr. Watchdog.
We'll keep reporting back.
Exactly. And if this thing happens, we will definitely shout out to all corners of the internet to make sure that everyone knows that they're overcharging.
That's right.
Me?
Power to the people.
Exactly.
Flying the flag.
Exactly.
All right. Next up, Capture One released version 14.3. Here are the main improvements.
Ooh, Magic Brush. Sounds good. That allows you to make complex masks for your image. That's number one. The number two update is called Show Images in Subfolders.
It's quite important.
It's very important. And my question about this update, and just generally on updates of the different bits of softwares, is why subfolder view is being implemented so late? I mean, Lightroom had it since, I guess, version 1 or 2.
Yeah.
We're not just criticizing Capture One in this case, but also Lightroom and other manufacturers as well as Nikon. We want you to let us know in the comments below what features are in general need of updating on all bits of software, Lightroom, Capture One, Nikon softwares, etc., etc. Do let us know in the comments below.
Absolutely. Interesting point. Had a chap who couldn't open his pictures, couldn't see his raw files on the Z7II. Transpired that they were in a subfolder and that what he needed to do was actually view subfolders, and he didn't even think...
In 2021, it just sounds so weird. I use both, but I never thought of this. And in Lightroom, it comes by default. So one of the things you just think, well, it has to be a top priority. If it cripples your workflow, why not implement this up? And it's not a very difficult feature to update, isn't it?
No, exactly.
All right, we got some film news for you.
Not good film news?
Not good film news, unfortunately. Fuji Velvia 100 has been discontinued in the United States as it contains prohibited toxic substances. Now, it's the first time I see where USA is ahead of any other countries in the world where they prohibit things based on what those, the film contains, or let's say food industry, etc., etc.
Yeah, usually it's the European market that kind of leads the attack on that one.
Leads the way.
Now, they say, actually, Fujifilm says that it poses no risk for your health, and film is still available in other parts of the world. But for our US watchers and listeners, unfortunately, you will start to struggle to get a hold of Velvia 100 fairly soon.
Absolutely. Do stock up on this and please don't eat the film.
Price adjustments incoming from the UK's Ilford Photo.
All right. Ilford Photo, or Harman Ilford, is the company that manufactures black and white films. Very famous HP5 Plus, Delta, and some other films.
FP4, there's a few.
Absolutely. And they say, well, the chemicals and other things becoming more expensive, again, due to supply shortages. So do expect the prices to go up.
Yep.
And in some cases, actually to go down.
Yeah.
But the price increase will be coming. So keep an eye on that. And again, our advice is probably stock up on your favorite black and white film from Ilford if you can. Okay, a bit of positive news. A London-based company, Kosmo Foto, has recently announced their Kickstarter for new film stock.
Yay! It's called Agent Shadow. It's an ISO 400 panchromatic black and white 35mm film, pushable to ISO 3200 and beyond. It's great for shooting at box speed for portraits or street photography, while also perfect for shooting when the light gets really low. The film is made by one of the most famous names in film production with nearly 150 years experience making film and photographic products.
Let me guess. Is it Kodak?
Might be.
Is it Fuji? Probably Kodak, isn't it?
I think it's probably Kodak, to be honest, but anyway.
I have a question for you. Obviously, we have Kodak and Fuji that manufactures the film, but nowadays we have Kosmo Foto. I've seen quite a few people releasing their own films. And if you look at CineStill, which is effectively a Kodak film designed for cinematography, being released by CineStill company. My question is, do those films are just available off the shelf? So I'm let's say, want to create my own film stock.
Right.
I go to the famous film manufacturer and I say, can I have a black and white film? Can you just throw a couple of ingredients there? Just a little bit of olive oil and a little bit of salt just to adjust the grain. And then do those things available off the shelf. You just need the money to order it. This is my question. What do you think?
I honestly don't know how they do it, because if they're not manufacturing their own film and they're buying it from someone else, they're not really doing anything except for repackaging it.
That's true. But then obviously it has its own characteristics. So what they do, they get the original film stock. And then maybe they add another ingredient or something. They just slightly change the process.
Yeah, exactly. It's fine.
Okay. It's an interesting one. I actually want to find out. And since Kosmo Foto is a London-based company.
Maybe they will do an interview with you.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that be nice?
All right. Well, that's it for the news today. Let's move on to reviews.
Yeah. So first up, we have a Nikon Z7 IBIS performance test. This is by the German Photo magazine, published in their August edition, available on Amazon. An interesting test comparing the IBIS of the Z7II with other mirrorless cameras. The Z7II was the best performer, with perfect results up to, I'm assuming, -7 EV?
Absolutely. And for us, German speakers, I can tell you that everything up to 7 stops, German magazine says sehr good.
Sehr good. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then after 7 stops, it just goes to yellow and says good.
Right.
And then
Canon
once
and
it goes
Sony.
to about 10 exactly, it stops. It just says Scheisse Brown.
No, it doesn't. Apparently, Canon and Sony didn't reach their expectations. So that's a little feather in the cap for Nikon. Well done to them for that.
Yeah, DP Review YT channel. So YouTube. Yeah, I call it YT.
YT.
Yeah, YT, why not? Published, or compared Nikon Z7 Mark II and Sony A7R Mark IV.
Interesting.
And you know what? They chose that 7 Mark II as a winner.
Yay. Well, again, another feather in the cap for the Z7
In
II.
your face.
Whose face?
I don't know.
Right. Finally, Tom Hogan, our mate Tom, published his review of the Nikon 105 f2.8 micro lens.
With all our disagreements with Tom, we still love him.
We do, for sure. So his final words are very positive. I mean, he says, yes, I like it a lot. The Z-mount version is a better macro lens than the 105 f2.8G and returns more to Nikon's original close-up snap than most of the recent f-mount lenses. Now, that article is well worth a read, so we will put a link to it in the description box.
Absolutely. And he also says that it surprisingly compares really well price-wise as well to other brands. Let's go to read and watch section. Now, Nikon partnered with Wall Street Journal. It's Wall Street Journal today, isn't it?
Wow, it really is.
So to publish series of articles on Nikon as a company. The series called Unlock the Future with the Power of Light, and the first articles in the series, I know, Unlock the Future with the Power of Light, reminds me of a scene from Sailor Moon for some reason.
Yeah. So the first article in the series concentrates on manufacturing advancements and the problem solving during challenging times. Designer's Voice Volume 3 article was published by Nikon. This featured Yoshiki Kitamura, a marketing communication designer at Nikon, who talks about Nikon design philosophy shifting from appearance to the essence of design.
The essence.
The essence.
And then also we have some YouTube videos to share. Matt Irvin compares 85Z lens with 105 micro and 7200 lenses. And he asks, who wins? Well, if you want to find out, definitely do check out his video below. And thanks for joining us today.
Yes, please do give us a like and a subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube, or if you're listening on a podcast platform, how about a review and a follow? That would be very helpful.
Absolutely. It is quite important, actually, because the way the technology works, the more you tell everyone that you watched us, the more Google and other podcast platforms tell everyone, go watch this video.
That's right. It's the algorithm.
Exactly.
With a capital A.
And it is smart.
Other things, you can find me on Instagram on what's my handle? Rebecca_Danesi. And you can find Konstantin
At Konstantin Koshkin.
Nice and simple.
Exactly.
There we
And we will see you next week.
We will. Thank you very much for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.